Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today, I have our guest name is Crunch, and she is a conversion copywriter and content creator for change makers and entrepreneurs who want to make an impact with the money and influence they have in their business. Her superpower is writing snazzy blogs and articles and turning the monologues you've been doing on Facebook and Instagram Live into summoning spells that magically warm up your ideal clients, right? So let's have her come on in today. We're going to be talking about just different content creation strategies, and I'm going to ask her a lot of questions. I hope you enjoy this show, and if you like it, leave us a review and come back for more. We love our listeners.
Welcome to the Savvy Scribe Podcast,
a podcast for healthcare professionals who are interested in starting their own health writing businesses.
I'm Janine, a registered nurse and your host. I'm a labor and delivery nurse, mom to these two incredible boys, wife to my best friend, and owner of two crazy Great Danes. I help nurses discover freelance writing as an extra income opportunity with help from my guests. Join us over on Facebook in the group Savvy Nurse Writer Community or savvynursewriter.com to join our course and membership to create your own profitable writing business.
Enjoy the show.
Okay, we are live and ready to roll now. So thank you. Thank you, Crunch, for coming on the show. Appreciate you being here. And I always like to start off with tell us where you're from, what you do, how you got where you are, and then we'll dive into the meat of the conversation today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Crunch. I am originally from the the traditional lands of the Orang Laut, which is now colonized as Singapore. And I currently live in the traditional lands of the Nahua, the Totonac, and the Mexica people who have been colonized as Mexico. So super excited to be here. I am a content and copywriter for purpose-driven professionals who are doing incredible things in the world. And I help them, with email, with articles, with blogs, with social media, and, just helping them kind of get visible and stay visible, even as life goes on behind the scenes. And so I help them with all kinds of content and writing related stuff. And to answer your question about how I got here, it was kind of an accident.
I think a lot of us are. We're all a bunch of accidents.
Right. I mean, nobody tells you to go to school for entrepreneurship or starting a business or whatever. You just kind of fall into it, or you find a need that exists in the marketplace. Oh, I can do that. So what happened for me was I was traveling around the world. I ran out of money, and then a friend, I was writing a travel blog at that time, and my friend reached out to me saying, Crunch, you're a great writer. Do you want to help other business owners write podcast show notes? And I was like, I have no idea, firstly, what podcasts are or what show notes are, but I'll give it a shot. So I gave it a shot and started expanding into the online business world, learned more about how people are running their businesses online. And from there, I realized that a lot of people actually struggle with writing content for their websites, like articles or blog posts or even emails, right? These are things that you do to show up for your audience, to share valuable information with them. And people are not doing it because they don't have time, because that's not something that pays them, right? Working with your clients one-to-one is what brings in the revenue. So you do that, and then the other stuff doesn't get done. So that's where I come in, and I help support business owners who want to show up online and share valuable information with their audience without having to do it themselves. So yeah, basically that's the very short summary of it.
How long have you been doing it now?
What year are we in now? I guess 5 years.
Very nice. Very good. Very good. I love it. Who are your favorite clients to work with? What area of industry, I should say?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm going to say I don't have a particular industry because that I love working with, just because I don't know, I get bored really easily. So I love working with people from different industries, just because it gives me something new to learn about. I'm working with currently a yoga teacher. I'm working with a business coach. I'm working with a tax consultant. I'm working with somebody who works with creating content for continuing education in the medical space.
Yeah.
Something like that. So I work with people from a variety of industries, and it just keeps things interesting, and when I'm interested, I can write things that are interesting that people want to
That is
read.
wonderful. That is great. That is great. So tell me, where do you find most of your clients? Like, what platform are they all hanging out on? Like, for me, it's always LinkedIn.
Yeah, I get clients from LinkedIn, but for me, mostly it's been about like referrals and
Yeah.
kind of relationship building, just kind of building up my network and through networking groups and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of people are hanging out on LinkedIn. So I think that's definitely like a good place to hang out if you want to, get more clients and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So today we're going to be talking about like content strategies. And I don't know where we're going to take this conversation, but we're going to take it somewhere. So,
Everywhere.
everywhere. So, I mean, basically, content creation, there's so many things to go into it. Blogging is one of them, right?
Mhm.
And emails, you mentioned, social media, you mentioned, but they all kind of work together. And maybe, Crunch, let's just start with when a client comes to you and says, I want to get visible,
Mhm.
what do you say? Are you their strategist, or do you just say, all right, I'll do this and this, tell me what to do?
That's a great question. And it is kind of like that, right? Like sometimes people come to me and they're like, I have no idea what to do. So tell me what to do. And then I kind of like guide them through it. But for me, I've always recommended that people focus on putting out content on their own websites. But before we get into that, maybe we should clarify like what is content, right? Like
Yes,
we
yes,
use this
start with
word
that.
all the time, and people are often like confused about like what content is. So for me, like I like to think about content as anything that you're sharing with your audience that isn't sales related, right? Like information, you're sharing tips, you're sharing strategies, you're sharing your own like story about like how you came to do what you do, or like how you help people, or how people have been helped by you. Like all of this is content, right? And that's the gist of it. And we can think of content in like the different platforms that we might share it, right? So like there is your website where you're sharing like articles and blog posts. There's social media, right? Like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of that. Like whatever you're posting on there is content. Emails that you share, tips with your email subscribers to keep them interested, to share information with them, to give them a little bit of an inside look into like how your business is running, or like what you do to help people. And of course, like Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives, YouTube videos, podcasts, all of this is content, right? So like it's a huge, huge, huge area. And people like look at all of this and feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
So I guess like I think it's important for you to first consider where your audience is hanging out before you figure out like what kind of content you want to be creating and how much of it you want to be creating, right? Like some people's audiences tend to be very resistant to consuming information like this online. So maybe you can get away with posting just one thing once a month, as long as it's like super information packed and it's like super valuable. And, maybe it's like an overview of all the things that you've shared or whatever, right? So like, it really depends on like what your audience needs, where they're hanging out, and how often, they expect to hear from you, right? So like all of these things kind of go into content creation strategies, right? So
Yes.
it varies from industry to industry, or for like even businesses within the same industry have different approaches to your content strategy. So I I don't know.
I think you
You have a
covered it,
question.
right? That is totally what content is, right? And, I think we should define the word campaign too, because so many people, that are new to this industry as a freelance writer, they hear about marketers always saying, yeah, we're going to be doing this campaign. And if you're new to the world of marketing, you might think of like political campaigns or something like that, because that's like what our mind, and then you get that queasy feeling in your stomach because nobody likes those anyway. But then you go, oh, this is a campaign. And what a campaign is using content all together. So if Crunch and I wanted to do a campaign promoting this podcast episode, for example, we would put together that like this is the end game, the podcast episode, and we kind of work backwards. So maybe we talk about it on social. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then, day of, it's here, we're going to do this. And then, the day after, we got our podcast episode, it's live. the day after, we're going to follow up. We're going to write a blog post with show notes and whatnot. And then maybe an email saying, did you catch it? If you didn't, here's the replay and here's the episode number, things like that. So a campaign, if you think about it, is just content in a bundle. So that's how a lot of clients come to us and they're like, where do I start? And I usually point the campaign direction, because I know they want to be everywhere, but posting one blog isn't going to get you anywhere because nobody's going to see it. You have to push it to an audience, unless they're getting great traffic, which they're probably not because they haven't done this yet. But that's the goal, is to get them more traffic and then obviously more customers and whatever. But first you need the content, and that's where we as writers come in, because somebody has to write it. And like you said, Crunch, nobody has time. Nobody has time to do this. We barely have time, and it's our job.
That is exactly right. Yeah. And I loved how you said that it's a bundle, right? Like it is everything that works together. Like I know some people focus a lot on social media, but then like what happens when Instagram dies for 6 hours, and then you're like panicking, like what happened to my 25,000 followers? Oh no, how am I going to get in touch with them? Right? Like keeping in mind that social media does not belong to us. We have no control over whether whether the platform's going to exist today, tomorrow, like 3 years from now, into the future, because we know that social media platforms come and go. The other thing is that people get hacked very often, especially if you're doing really well. Like people tend to like copy your accounts, follow your subscribers, your followers, and then like kind of capture them. And then suddenly people are following them and not you, and you're the original, right? And then also you get locked out of your account for posting something. And then, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg decides like, I don't like this. I'm going to restrict this account, right? So we can't control anything that happens on social media. That like literally two platforms that you have control over. It's your own website and your email list, right? So like your email subscribers are yours, as long as you haven't paid for them, I guess.
Yeah, and people do that. Don't do that, guys. Don't do that.
Sounds
like an easy way out, because it is, but they aren't yours, and then you're a slime ball, because nobody wants content from somebody who never even asked for them to give them content. And actually, what you just said, what's funny right now, I keep like looking at my other screen because I've tried to go live in our Facebook group, and Mark Zuckerberg obviously thought that it was a bad thing to do this, because he took down our video and said that we're promoting nudity and sexual things on this video.
Clothed.
I go,
so are you.
I am fully clothed. We did not mention one thing. Nudity. So that's why, like, now those of you that are, part of the group and they're on this Zoom link, awesome, you're here. And then same thing, podcast. Yeah, it's, hosted through a website, but essentially all the content's still mine. And, you could always push it on an email list or whatever if we needed to. So again, it's, can this be better timing? It's exactly what just happened. And now I'm afraid to go live again. I'm like, are they going to like shoot me down that I'm like doing this? So I'm just going to leave it be. We'll just stay over here.
Right. Yeah. Maybe just like post the video into the group later.
Yeah, exactly. How weird that was. It's never happened. But yeah, so I like that. I like how you were talking about how it's how we can use our different platforms, use different things, but really the things that belong to us, it's an email list. So I think a lot of times too, as entrepreneurs and freelancers, you're almost like, well, who do I want on my list? Like, who are the people that care about what I'm doing? And it's your ideal clients. So that's who you're going to want to market to and get your services and whatnot. So the other thing too is email list as a writer, you might think like, I don't know what to send them and stuff like that. But also send them a brochure, send them your services. That's another way to get their email address. And now that's yours. So again, you can always reach out. Hey, Mark, just Janine checking in. I know you weren't interested in the services before, but we just posted this article. I really thought you'd be interested in it. Something like that. Like that's still engaging your audience and engaging the right people, which is sometimes hard. It's hard to find the right people in this market. I get that.
Yeah. And that's why like having like a great lead magnet or something that's of value to your audience is so important to get people into your list that are interested in the services that you offer. And that's why like, I think it's more important to have an aligned lead magnet than just any old lead magnet, right? Like we don't want to have people just joining our list because they think your lead magnet's interesting, but that lead magnet's not actually related to what you're actually selling, So
Yes.
you have to make sure that that's coherent and that's cohesive, like it makes sense. Like this small thing that you offer them is something that's going to be interesting to them about like your bigger service, right? Like whatever that is. So that's something
It's
to
kind of
keep in
like
mind.
think of it as like the campaign, like that the lead magnet's just the beginning, but in the end, what do you want your client to do? Pay for writing services, blogging, ebooks, whatever you're offering, that big service, relate it. So say, let's give examples. Say your opt-in's a ebook, right? Download this ebook for free. And you want them to eventually book you for writing services for ebooks. That's like what you're going towards. So you don't want to offer them a guide to, I don't know, email marketing when you're going to an ebook, something like that.
Right. So what we want to do in our lead magnet is trying to tell them like what they need to be doing in order to achieve the results that they want. And because that's what they want to be doing, like you don't tell them like how to do it or do it for them, right? Like that's the service that you offer. You offer them like that you do it for them, like you write the ebook for them, right? So you tell them in the ebook that you're selling, your lead magnet, like, okay, this is what you need to be doing, or why an ebook is important in your business, or blah blah. And then like the call to action at the end of the lead magnet is like, if you are interested in figuring out how to write the best ebook for your business, contact me. And then you tell them how to do it. And then like, if you're interested in somebody to write the ebook for you, I'm available.
And that's a great point, because you can tell them how after they engage a little bit. You want them to have engagement and then tell them the how. That's fine. But then they're going to go, I don't have time to do this. This is great, but I don't have time to do it. And then they say, but I want you to do it. And that's how you close those deals and get them to say, yes, that's, this person obviously knows what they're doing because they wrote this, how-to guide. So I'm going to trust them. And that's where we're trying to go with this. You want to know, like, and trust, know, like, and trust. And then once they do, then it's an easy sale after that.
Correct, because we don't buy from random strangers on the street. We buy from our friends, right? And like when you send regular emails, when you connect with your audience via social media, when you're sharing useful information all the time on your blog or in articles, that's how people are like, oh, this person, Janine's so great. She's always sharing like great tips and great things. And then like, when I'm ready to buy, I'm going to like, okay, Janine, like, I want to hire you because you've been with me. Like, even when I wasn't giving you anything, you were giving me lots of stuff for free. And that's why, like, I want to work with you. Like, I want to give you my money. I feel like you're my friend. I listen to your podcast all the time.
And you don't even know how many people do that. Like, it's crazy how many clients that like say, oh, I don't need you right now, but I'll put your name in my database, blah, blah. And then you're like, all right, whatever. And then like a year and a half later, you're like, whoa, yeah, I do remember you. And yeah, let's jump on a call and, keep going with this. And it's just because you provided value and you're a genuine human being. People like genuine human beings. Like it sounds we make it sound difficult sometimes, but it's not. It's super easy to build relationships with people. It's literally just be nice and giving. And always give more than you receive. That, I think that whole mantra is true. Like, the more you give, don't ever think you're giving too much. You're not. Like, I don't know what number podcast episodes, like 200 something now. And I mean, if you listen to all 200 episodes, you'll know how to build a business. It's not, it didn't take 200 episodes to learn that. Everything else is just, polished and, more granular. But truly, like, I'm here, like, we have a course, and that's why people buy the course, is they go, if she's giving away all this information on a podcast, what am I going to get inside the course? And then you go to the course, you're like, oh, wow, this is great. I have this community, I have this and that. And that's how you do with clients too. You go, here's this, here's that, here's this blog post I wrote, here's that. And they go, wow, she really knows what she's talking about. I'm going to hire her because she could do this for me.
Exactly.
Good. What else? What else, Crunch? What else could we talk about content?
I don't know. I guess like one of the things that I wanted to maybe remind people is that not all your content needs to be fresh and new. So let's talk about
Repurpose, yes.
repurposing. Yes, right. So I feel like business owners have somehow fallen into this trap that they think that every single piece of content that they put out needs to be new information, but that's not true. You can share the same information over and over and over and over again for multiple reasons. Firstly, because your audience is always growing, right? So if you posted something 6 months ago and somebody joined you 3 months ago, they wouldn't have seen it. And if you don't tell them about it again, they're never going to know that you said this thing that was super important and super valuable, right? The other thing is that people need to hear information multiple times before it sinks in. Do you remember like in high school and in school when like our math teachers told us like 18,000 times that a squared plus b squared equals to c squared before it finally sank in, like
Yep.
it's not something that you tell them once and they remember it. You need to like have those multiple repetitions of who it is you work with, what it is that you do, how it is you help them, all of this over and over and over again for people to finally say like, oh, okay, Janine does this for these people and this is how she helps people. Or like, like it takes a while. And also we have so many, many, like different sources of information coming at us all the time. Social media, ads, the TV, the radio, who listens to the radio anymore? Podcasts,
Right.
all of these things we're just constantly inundated with information that if you're not showing up over and over again, saying the same thing over and over again, people are going to forget who it is that you work with or like what you do and all of that, like just because there's so much noise, right?
There's so much noise, more than ever. And they
Mhm.
even said, I just watched a TED Talk and it was them saying that, AI is going to take over for the election coming up in 2024. That last election we had was the last people election. Everything else is going to be taken over by marketing, like AI marketing. So anything we say about any candidate, any ad we see, anything we hear on, it's all generated from AI to skew our decisions and always keep us that way. And we're not going to see the other side unless you go searching on it. So
Yeah.
it's interesting too how, you know, we we have to evolve from robots basically for us to go, oh, content is important for me to see my side of things and other people's visions and whatnot. So I thought that was really interesting too, speaking of noise and now who's listening, right?
It's interesting that you brought up AI. I read an article recently that Google's actually penalizing content created by AI. So if you're using AI in your business, like that's a good way to go, with a certain number of like caveats. So like, firstly, don't just copy and paste whatever ChatGPT gives you into your own platforms. That's not going to do very well. Also, like, have you seen the stuff that it writes? It's kind of lame. I mean,
Yeah,
it sounds like a robot wrote it because
it's
like
very
it uses
general. We'll say that.
yeah, it's very general, it's very generic. It doesn't sound like a real human or a real person or any specific human. It sounds vaguely human. It's just kind of like boring. So what
Yeah.
you need to do is like use ChatGPT or any of these AI things as a starter, right? Like you tell it what you want it to write, and then it comes up with something. You go in and you tweak it. You add in your own expressions. You add in how you speak, and kind of like personalize it for your audience so that it actually makes sense and it is distinctive and it's not just like generic stuff, because AI can only give you like what you give it, right? Like
Mhm.
the output depends on the input. So use it as a starting point, but not like as your end game. And don't be afraid to play around with it and like
Yeah.
give it more prompts. I think that's been very helpful. What I'm going to share a tip that I use in my
Yeah.
own writing to help me with AI. Is if you have a piece of content that you've written that sounds like you, that uses all your expressions, all of that, like you can put that into ChatGPT and say like, using this text as a sample, create another piece of text about blah 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 topic with these points. and then you say like, here's the sample. And then it kind of creates things that sound a little bit more like you're obviously there's still tweaking and edits that need to happen, but it's a better like starting point. So that's
and
a tip.
I encourage people to use it to help with like idea generation and just making our lives easier. That's the point of it, is making things easier, making time efficient and whatnot. But the writing skill of the writer is not going anywhere. And
Mhm.
I agree with you. Like, and actually, I think I posted on LinkedIn back in, I don't know, early, I want to say February, maybe, about AI and how everybody's, oh, it's going to take over our jobs and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's really, really scared. And I said, there's going to be a detection tool. There's nothing yet, and there wasn't. Now, if you search AI detector, it's a free tool. You can paste your article in there and it will tell you if it's AI detected or not. So, I always like to pose that warning to use it to your advantage as a writer, but don't let it write everything and not do anything with it, because that's where you're going to get penalized, because clients are going to learn this and they're going to look at your writing. So again, it's like plagiarism, right? Paraphrase, do all the things correctly, and you'll be fine. But it is a great tool. It's really fun. And I love playing with the thing. And I think everybody should take time out of their day and just like spend 15 minutes on it just to see what it can do. You know what we
Right.
did recently with it? I was like, well, when we're going on vacation, we're going, so we have this map in our house and it's the 50 states, and we have a camper, and we want to hit all 50 states in the next 5 years, 10 years, maybe. 5 years seems to go really fast. So we're like, we have to go to West Virginia. And I'm like, what are we gonna do in West Virginia? So I'm like finding a campground. We found a campground, found the city. And I asked ChatGPT, what can I do? Because if you search what can I do on Google, like in whatever city, West Virginia, it's the sponsored stuff. I don't want the sponsored stuff. I want to really know what to do. So I put it in there and it came up with all these things. I put family friendly. It's the way you prompt it. So then I was like, well, heck, I'm going to do this for when we go to Florida. What is there to do in North Reddington Beach, Florida for couples? And it gave me a huge list. So like, play with it. There's like so many fun things when it's just general content, like stuff that I don't feel like searching the internet for. I'll go to ChatGPT to check that out now.
That's a great point. Yeah. Just one word of caution. ChatGPT is notorious. So like ChatGPT has a few like restrictions or I guess. It doesn't search the internet for anything that happened past a certain date in like
2021. Yeah.
like September. So like anything that like if there were
So
new
one of
things
the things
last
was it
year,
didn't exist
it's not
anymore.
gonna be there.
That was my thing.
Right. The other thing is that it's also notorious for like making things up. Like
Yes.
it makes up information and like creates news articles that don't exist. For I don't know like if that's a feature or a bug, but like be careful if you're using it for research purposes. It might
Yeah.
not be accurate, it might not be relevant. So you
You
might
know what
want
it
to
is good for though?
those.
If you're not using it like for research, but for examples, like if you're trying to write an article and you're putting this point in there, say, hey, ChatGPT, give me an example of this, and paste that in there. And it's pretty good. I mean, it's still very general. You still got to tweak it, but it's still, I like we should have asked it when we were talking about a campaign. Like it probably would have done a way better job than I did. But it does, I mean, because it can think faster, right? But it probably would have done a really good job with that. And it's something you could play with, if your clients like, do you have any ideas that I can use for this next blog piece? You can ask ChatGPT, but you also want to make sure tone, voice, and that it's not general stuff. They want really narrow topics. But I mean, again, it's a good idea generator when you're staring at that blank screen of death where you're like, I don't know. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. There's no ideas flooding in my head anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
But there's some content creation strategies, everybody. So before I open the floor to some questions, is there anything else you want to add? And if not, add your stuff. But if not, let me know
I have
where
one
people
thing
can find you. Yeah.
Just like about consistency. So like content
Yes.
creation is great and everything, but it has to be consistent for it to make a difference. Like if you're
It's a
gonna
long
post,
game.
Right. It is a long game. It's not something that you can wake up and like, okay, I'm going to post 25 articles today and not post anything for the rest of the year. That doesn't work that way. We need you to show up like regularly. And the thing is that people sometimes get confused between like being consistent and constant. They think that just because you need to be consistent, it means you need to be constantly posting something. But that's not true. Consistency can come without being constantly on social media or constantly creating content, right? So that's just one thing to keep in mind, that like you need to find a consistent rhythm for you, for your lifestyle, your business that works, right? Like whether it's showing up once a week on a podcast, showing up once a month with a blog article, showing up 3 times a week on social media, like whatever it is that works for you, find that rhythm and stick to it. Because, you know, like when people listen to the podcast, for example, like if you don't show up on the Tuesday afternoon that you're supposed to have a podcast episode showing up, people get into a panic and they're like, oh no, I can't wash my dishes because I don't have the podcast to listen to. And then they go find a new podcast and then they never listen to you ever again, just because you missed that 1 week because you were on a holiday or whatever. So like keep that in mind and, you know, take that into consideration when you're planning your content out, that you want to figure out a way that you can be consistent, you know?
Yeah. And a good way to do that is to batch things. Like if there was anything in my life that I have done for 211 weeks straight, that's the episode we published today. There's nothing. So if you think I do this every week, I don't. There's no way. But it's like, you know, it looks like I do though. It looks like 211 weeks I have been doing so well. Really, it's not. It comes down to planning though, where we had to plan the podcast along, like you reached out to me a long time ago, and by the time we got you on the schedule and stuff, so
like
yeah,
in February or something.
yeah, and I'm like, well, we're booking into May, and I'm like, oh, that sounds so good, like, but we are, and here we are. So yeah, I think that's the other thing too. To be consistent, you don't have to be constant, but you do have to plan it out, and you do have to do something. But it relieves that anxiety of like, oh my God, I got to show up on a Tuesday at noon when, you know, grandma wants to go to lunch or something. And you're like, I can't, I have a podcast to do. And you could have done it last Friday and published it on Tuesday. And there are social media schedulers that are free. You don't have to, you don't have to pay as long as you're not going over the amount of posts. But and you probably don't have to if you're just a solopreneur trying to make yourself known out there. There's no reason for it. So
yeah, I mean, like Facebook Meta, as it's called these days, has a scheduling tool that you can, use to schedule out for Instagram and Facebook.
And so Facebook now. Yeah.
It's easy, it's integrated. You don't have to worry about getting banned because it's a third-party tool. So
and what's cool is you can change the caption. So they have the tool, and you could say, I want it to look the same on Instagram and Facebook, or I want it to look this way on Instagram, this way on Facebook, and plan them at different times, which is kind of cool too. So yeah, there's plenty of ways. A lot of
capability in there. So don't forget to take advantage of the tools that we have.
Yeah. But I think the one thing we should walk away from this crunch is not to be overwhelmed and choose one. Just choose one thing right now and go all in for like 30 days and see what happens. I bet you'll get responses, and I bet you'll get, you'll get some traction.
Start doing it. I mean, I think people get too much in their brain about it. Like, oh no, what am I going to post? And like, nobody wants to hear what I say. But like, honestly, that's just a story that you're telling yourself. Like, everybody wants to hear what you're saying. And, the people who need to hear what you have to say will find you, and they will be listening. So don't be afraid to show up and say what you got to say.
Exactly. So that being said, where can people find you and learn more about what you do?
I hang out. You can check out my website. It's crunchranjani.com. I'm on Instagram, on LinkedIn, mostly posting there kind of fairly regularly. I post, I think, like 3 to 5 times on LinkedIn and about the same frequency on Instagram. So we can connect on any of these platforms. And I'm super happy to hop on a chat with anybody who wants to talk about, their content creation or writing emails and whatever. And just to connect with more cool business owners who are doing interesting things in the world.
Amazing. Appreciate you. Come back, share more content stuff with us. I know you had some ideas in our form, so we'll definitely reschedule and we'll have even more coffee chats together.
Awesome. Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you again. Have an awesome day in Mexico
Okay.
where the sun is shining. And I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Savvy Scribe. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Until next time.